This afternoon we're here to talk about the lost class of 1959 and the events that surrounded that. And I'd like to thank you for taking some time today to talk about that. So may I ask, first of all, what is your name?
My name is Joyce Taylor Manby.
Okay, and how old were you during the summer of 1958?
I was 17 years old.
And where did you live?
I lived in Norfolk, Virginia. I was a student getting ready to go into my senior year at Northview High School.
So you should have been graduating the following year then?
Right, 1959.
In 1959. So what can you tell me, Joyce, about the prevailing racial segregation in Norfolk at that time? I mean, to what extent did black and white people mix with each other and interrelate?
Most of the interaction I had with black people at that time was my grandmother had a housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
When we went shopping downtown Norfolk, there were separate bathroom facilities for blacks and whites, separate lunch counters at places like Woolworths and Kresge's and Grant's. Black people were not allowed to ride the same elevators.
Okay.
Use the same toilet facilities.
Yep. What about public transports?
Public transport, people had to sit at the back of the bus. Black people had to sit at the bus. I can remember as a child, my parents were really not very racially motivated.
Right.
Because they came from small towns in the western part of the state.
For sure.
And it was just different than being in a city of this size. Yeah. And the things that I can remember, old people, having to stand because there was no place for them to sit in the back of the bus.
Yep.
And it bothered me. As a child, it bothered me. I thought it was a bad thing. And my mother did too, but there was nothing. She'd say, be quiet. Don't
make a fuss.
Because there would be plenty of seats in the front, but black people could not sit in those seats.
I see. And schools, of course, they were...
schools. There was one high school in the city of Norfolk designated for black students. And there was no, it was not legal for black and white, for Caucasians to marry.
Right. Yes.
And there were other races that were in that category. But the biggest thing, you never saw, if you did, it was very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that everybody was just taken back.
For sure. So given all that, you might not even have been aware at the time, but what was the standard of education for black kids in a black school compared to their white counterparts in terms of education materials, teachers' salaries, transportation?
I think the teachers' salaries were probably about the same, but I don't know because I wasn't in tune to those things. Yeah. But I do know that I've been told that the textbooks that they used were not always up to standard.
Right.
And which they should have been, but they were not. And that they just didn't have to get the education that the white students did at that time.
Now, back in 1954, in Brown versus the Board of Education, the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled that segregation in school was unconstitutional. But I don't think that was a terribly popular decision here in Virginia. How did the state and the local authorities comply with that?
They did not.
No.
They didn't. They absolutely did not.
Yeah, I believe there were some measures called massive resistance.
Exactly.
And what kind of was involved there?
Well, as we've discussed, in 1958 in September, the Supreme Court had said that they would open the schools.
Mm-hmm.
They would integrate public schools. Well, in our city and other cities in our state, the governor said to close all schools that were being forced to integrate. And I happened to be in one of those schools in Norfolk, Virginia.
So the premise was that black kids were going to be allowed into these schools, we're just going to close the school completely.
Close the schools completely.
Regardless of the impact on the education of the
kids.
And
that decision was made by city. The governors told them to do that, right. And then the cities, of course, they had the opportunity to do that. South Norfolk, or City of Chesapeake, at that time, but I think it was Norfolk County, Princess Anne County. They did not close their schools.
Okay. So I understand there's something like 10,000 kids involved, and all of the white schools in the city of Norfolk were closed.
All the white schools in the city of Norfolk and the middle schools, which were junior high schools, then classified as junior high schools, they were closed. And the some of the students in Norfolk went to other schools. They had family that lived in other areas, and they went and stayed with those families.
Other areas in the state or farther afield?
In the state, or we border North Carolina, so
yes.
A lot of people went to North Carolina to finish their education, and some of the schools in which is Chesapeake now. Like Oscar Smith High School, they opened their schools in the evening to students.
Okay. Because they didn't have capacity during the day for
during the day for, and so students went there. And there wasn't a lot of violence going on during that time, but there was some with riding the school buses, and I enrolled, but then my parents decided they didn't want me going there because it was quite a distance to travel on the school bus, and it was late, and there had been a couple of things that they were not real happy with. It was so I just remained out of school. They thought about sending me to Danville, Virginia, but didn't do that. Just kept thinking they're going to open up,
Yeah, I would imagine there was some uncertainty about how long this thing was going to last.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody believed that it would last as long as it did.
So how long did it last? I mean, we closed the schools in September of 58.
It did not open, and then schools opened back up in February. In January, I think it was the Supreme Court ordered that the schools would open. And by that time, I had gotten married. I was going to get married in June. After school, after graduation. But a lot of my friends, the same thing happened, and we ended up going to night school, finishing our education.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I was reading a report from the Virginian Pilot from the town which said, and I'll quote to you, "In a headlong rush into adult life, almost a fourth of the 17 and 18-year-olds, some of them former honour students, have swapped their textbooks for jobs, marriage and the armed forces. Unlike students in the lower grades, they feel they can't afford to wait around."
Right.
And apparently that's your story.
Right.
Yeah. So, you didn't complete school that year, you didn't go back after that?
No, because like I said, I got married in December. I planned to get married in June, but schools were not starting, and so we convinced my parents to let me get married, and so I got married in December of that year.
I see. And did you subsequently complete your high school education?
I did. I went to night school and ended up taking the GED and getting that, and then I went on to later in life. I ended up with being certified as a human resources manager.
Right. Very good indeed.
Through Old Dominion University.
Now we're a little bit more enlightened today, and I believe there was an event in 2009, 50 years after the days that we're talking about. Do you want to share your experience with that?
Yes. And they gave diplomas to everyone that should have gotten a diploma in 1959 that did not get one. And I got mine, even though I had gotten the GED. I've got a real...
So Norfolk Public Schools, this honorary diploma is awarded to Joyce Marie Taylor from Norview Senior High School, given in the city of Norfolk, Virginia, this 19th day of June, 1959.
And there was a commencement, and people that we had not seen in 50 years came.
Oh, wow.
And they did that for all of the Norview, Maury, and Granby high schools. Mm-hmm. We had the commencement at Chrysler Hall.
I imagine in the meantime some of those people may have even been deceased.
Oh yeah, some people were deceased, and it was, and a lot of people had gotten their diplomas from other, places, other states, other localities.
So if they'd completed their education elsewhere, they
still wanted to have that Norview diploma.
Yeah.
And it was really important, like I said, I was near retirement age,
yep.
And I had a nice career, but I still wanted that because I felt like I'd been robbed of that.
I can understand that. I'm sure you value it very much.
Yes, I do.
And I think there's an interesting footnote to that. That the gentleman who gave your diploma was...
He was an African American.
He was an African American. So
yes.
Over 50 years, things have changed a little bit.
Yes, they
in
have.
The city of Norfolk.
Yes, they have. I retired from public service, public health,
yep.
for the state of Virginia, and some of my dearest friends were African American, and we used to laugh and talk about the things that happened. And I remember one incident, and this had happened with my daughter too. They were looking at our annual, high school annual, and wanted to know where were the black children. And a friend of mine who went to Booker T, same thing. Her daughter opened up and said, well, where are the white children? and they just couldn't understand how it was. And it's almost unbelievable myself that in this country, our freedom, that this took place.
As recently as it did.
Yes.
Within your lifetime. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the Norfolk 17, the 17 African American kids who did finally enroll in February of 1959? What do you know of their experiences?
They have, I believe all of them, because they were all at this, the ones, I think there were a couple that were not here anymore, that were deceased, but they were at this commencement. But they've done very well in life, well educated. In fact, I recently went to a funeral of one of the white football players who was a sophomore at Norview High School the year the schools were closed, and one of the black 17 that was, he was there and spoke at his funeral.
Oh, wow.
And he talked about how he felt safe with him, that he said that he had other friends, other white friends that he had met there at school that were good to him, but this particular person was truly his brother and protected him.
Oh,
and
that's right.
And he told some stories like that of different things. And he was the first black football player for Norview. And when they went to, I think it was Roanoke to play, and they were staying overnight, and they had to stop and eat, they would not, the restaurant they stopped in would not allow him to eat in the dining room.
Oh, my goodness.
So this man that had died and a couple of the other football players said, well, set us a chair in the kitchen with him, and they all ate in the kitchen. And he was so happy to come there and to be able to tell those stories.
That's nice, show of solidarity.
Yes.
Well, Joyce, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and sharing your reminiscences of that strange chapter in American history.
It is a very strange chapter, and I'm glad it's over. And in some areas it may not be, but hopefully we have all learned.
I'd like to think so. Once again, thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome.